Have you ever opened your desk drawer reaching for something that means the world to you, only to find it gone? My name is Rebecca Lynn, and on a Tuesday that began just like any other one. Small absence changed the course of my life. It started with a simple, unfamiliar phone call, one I almost let ring out the way we do when life feels predictable and safe. But that day, I picked up. The voice on the line told me he had my father's watch. My father's watch gone. My heart thudded with disbelief, then dread. In that single moment, all my quiet routines shattered. The watch wasn't just a piece of jewelry. It was the last and maybe the most precious thing my father ever gave me, a small, gleaming promise that time could still be on my side, even after he was gone. I'd kept it with me every day since he passed, sometimes, glancing at the inscription inside when work felt too heavy or the world too sharp. Suddenly, what I thought was safe in my hands had vanished. I rushed home, memories flooding back Sunday mornings, building model trains, Dad's gentle laughter, the way he'd squeeze my shoulder before a test. I felt 12 years old again, desperate for answers, desperate for him. That afternoon, as the city outside hurried along, I realized how quickly what matters most can slip away. In the hours that followed, I would uncover secrets I never imagined, confront the kind of betrayal I thought only happened to other people, and find myself standing at a crossroads I never planned to face. But I want you to know this isn't just a story about loss or anger. It's about rediscovering the courage to protect what's yours, the hidden strength in quiet people, and the astonishing ways love can reach us even from the other side of goodbye. If you've ever lived in a house that didn't quite feel like home, you'll understand the quiet ache that became my everyday. After my father passed, it was just me and my mother for a while. Our world small, but somehow enough. Then came David, her new husband, with his big ideas and bigger personality, followed by Max, his son from another marriage. They arrived with their own stories, laughter that didn't quite fit the walls, and a new way of doing family that felt just a little out of tune. I tried truly to blend in, to find my rhythm within this patched-together life. People like to say family is everything, but nobody talks about what happens when family is suddenly redefined by strangers, who share your dinner table, but not your memories. There were nights I'd sit in my room, hearing voices downstairs that grew comfortable without me, the sound of inside jokes I'd never quite get. In American families, especially those formed from second marriages, these invisible boundaries are everywhere. Sometimes you fit right in. Sometimes, no matter how hard you try, you're always standing just outside the circle, smiling politely, hoping to be invited in. I remember the first Christmas after they moved in. Max got a new mountain bike. I got a sweater my mom had picked out in a rush. David told stories about his entrepreneurial childhood, while Mom beamed at his confidence, his vision. Max has so much drive, she'd say, glancing at me with a worried softness, as if my quieter dreams somehow didn't count. I felt myself shrinking, becoming less visible in my own home. It was the kind of loneliness that has nothing to do with being alone and everything to do with being unseen. Looking back, I realize how many families struggle quietly with this. I had friends who whispered similar stories, step-siblings who never became real siblings, mothers torn between old love and new promises, stepfathers trying too hard or not hard enough. It's easy to believe you're the only one who feels misplaced, but you're not. The truth is, every blended family has growing pains. The lesson I wish someone had told me: you can be kind, you can be patient, but you can't force a bond that others aren't ready to share. And that's okay. Sometimes your only job is to hold on to yourself. Still, even in the awkwardness, I tried to build bridges. I showed up for family dinners, offered to help with chores, laughed at Max's corny jokes, and cheered him on when he launched yet another can't-miss business idea. But inside, I protected the little world my dad and I had shared, a place of quiet understanding, hard work, and honest promises. That sense of being on the outside shaped the way I saw everything, especially what happened next, when Max's big ambitions and my mother's blind hope collided in ways that would change all of us. Walking into Russo's Pawn and Loan felt a bit like stepping into another time. The place was crowded with old guitars, tarnished trophies, and memories someone else no longer needed. Behind the counter stood Mr. Joe Russo, a man whose thick Boston accent and watchful eyes gave nothing away. When he saw me, though, his expression softened. "You must be Rebecca," he said, as if he'd been waiting. That single sentence made my heart twist. I realized my father's kindness had left ripples I never even saw. Sometimes the smallest gestures travel the farthest, something my dad always believed. Joe gently slid a small leather box across the counter. Inside, my father's watch glimmered under the harsh pawnshop lights. "Your father was one of the good ones," Joe murmured almost to himself. "He told me Dad used to come by not just for tools, but sometimes to help other men out quietly, without asking for anything in return." Hearing that, I understood for the first time just how far Dad's generosity had reached. In a city that moved so fast, he had managed to slow down for others. It struck me how easily we overlook these everyday acts, taking for granted the character they reveal. Joe looked me in the eye and said, "This watch wasn't meant to be sold." I knew something was wrong. He explained how Max, eager, nervous, all wild plans and half-truths, brought the watch in claiming it was his to sell. Joe recognized the story didn't add up. That's the thing about pawn shops, they're not just places for bargains. They're crossroads of hope and desperation, of dreams lost and sometimes found again. Joe did something most wouldn't. He held onto the watch, digging through old records, searching for a clue. He knew what family really means, sometimes more than those bound by blood. In the old files, Joe found Dad's name 15 years ago, when he'd pawned the same watch for exactly 1 month, then reclaimed it, every penny repaid with pride. The timing lined up with when I started at St. Gabriel's, a school that stretched our budget to its limits. Dad always said he'd picked up extra shifts, never letting on that he'd risked his most precious belonging for my future. That kind of love, quiet, unseen, asking nothing in return, is more rare than any heirloom. The lesson is simple: real value lies not in things, but in the intentions behind them. Sitting in that cramped, cluttered shop, I felt closer to my father than I had in years. But Joe wasn't finished. He'd discovered something odd about the watch. A tiny hidden mechanism, a secret only someone paying close attention could find. When he pressed it, the case sprang open, revealing a slip of paper with my dad's familiar handwriting. "Check the safe deposit box," it read. Suddenly, the story had shifted from loss to mystery, and my father's legacy felt even larger, urging me onward, one step deeper into the heart of everything he'd tried to protect. Holding that tiny slip of paper between my fingers, I felt both exhilaration and unease. Dad's handwriting, neat, slanted, unmistakably his carried instructions that seemed almost out of a novel. "Check the safe deposit box at Harbor First. Box 19. The key is in my old red toolbox inside the handle." It was strange realizing he'd planned something so secret. I wondered what could possibly be important enough to hide this way. The words lingered in my mind as I left the shop, the weight of the watch around my wrist suddenly heavier, as if it carried more than just time. On the drive home, my thoughts twisted between hope and doubt. Why all the secrecy? Was Dad protecting me from something or for something? It made me think of families I knew who had found letters or boxes tucked away after a loved one was gone, each discovery bringing up more questions than answers. Sometimes these secrets reveal heartbreak, sometimes a gift. My dad had always taught me to prepare for surprises: the flat tire on a rainy day, the emergency $20 bill, the importance of having a backup plan. Now it seemed he'd left me the ultimate backup, a puzzle I needed to solve on my own. The first step was finding the red toolbox. In our garage, I paused to take in the scene shelves, lined with paint cans, old tennis rackets, tools, carefully arranged in ways only my father understood. The toolbox was right where I remembered it, heavy with memories of childhood afternoons spent passing him wrenches and holding flashlights. When I opened the handle compartment, my fingers brushed against a small brass key wrapped in electrician's tape. There it was, the first tangible piece of the mystery. The moment felt almost sacred, a secret handshake across time. I sat on the workbench for a moment, just holding the key, and realized how much of my father lived on in these quiet rituals. Even after loss, people leave us blueprints, sometimes in words, sometimes in habits, sometimes in literal keys. I thought about all the ways parents try to prepare their kids for a future they won't see: college funds, insurance lessons, about changing your own oil. Yet the most lasting gifts are the ones that make us think, make us search, make us grow. That's the lesson I was only starting to learn. Every family has hidden stories, sometimes buried deeper than a toolbox in a cluttered garage. As I drove toward Harbor First the next morning, I felt a new kind of anticipation, My mother watched me go puzzled and a little worried, but I only smiled and told her I'd explain soon. There was a sense that something was shifting inside me, a readiness to face not just whatever Dad had left, but also the parts of myself I'd kept boxed away, afraid to look too closely. The sun was rising over the city, and I held the key tight, eager and anxious to open whatever door my father had left waiting for me. The bank felt colder than I remembered, its marble floors echoing every nervous step I took. When I reached the counter, I showed the teller the key, my name, and my ID, my voice a little unsteady. The manager, a kindly woman named Mrs. O'Neill, remembered my father. Her gentle smile made the whole experience feel less intimidating, as if kindness itself lingered in the walls. She led me through a security door to a private room where Box 19 sat waiting. The moment felt heavy, like I was on the verge of learning something about my father that might change how I saw him, and maybe even myself. As Mrs. O'Neill turned the key and set the box on the table, I hesitated. What if what was inside brought more pain than comfort? I thought of stories I'd heard, families torn apart by secrets discovered too late, old debts, lost letters, even confessions that changed the past forever. My hands trembled as I opened the box. Inside, there was no dramatic revelation, no shocking confession, just a thick manila envelope, a well-worn leather notebook, and a letter addressed to me. The simplicity almost made me laugh with relief, but the weight of what these objects might mean was real. I opened the letter first, recognizing my father's handwriting instantly. He told me he'd started this safe deposit box the year I was born, wanting to build something lasting for me, a cushion for whatever life threw my way. The envelope held bearer bonds, simple, practical, not flashy, but worth enough to offer a sense of security I'd never known before. The notebook was a detailed journal of his contracting business, filled with notes, invoices, and names of clients who still owed him money. Dad's careful planning, his faith in me, shone through every page. It struck me that so many parents work quietly behind the scenes, doing everything they can to give their children a better start, often without fanfare or even acknowledgement. I thought of friends who'd discovered a hidden college fund, an unexpected trust, or just a parent's handwritten list of life advice tucked in a drawer. The real lesson is that true love is preparation, building a bridge for those you care about, even if you're not there to see them cross it. Sometimes what we inherit isn't just money or things, but an example of how to love quietly, persistently, with hope. Sitting in that small bank room, I felt a mixture of gratitude, grief, and responsibility. My father hadn't just left me resources. He'd left me a challenge to stand on my own feet, to claim what was mine, to live up to the trust he'd placed in me. I knew then I had to face my family, to ask hard questions, to demand respect, and to defend my father's legacy from those who saw it only as dollar signs. I stood letter in hand, ready to return home, not just as a daughter, but as someone determined to set things right. Walking back through my front door, I felt the weight of everything I'd discovered pressing on my chest. The house was unusually quiet. My mother and David were at the kitchen table, surrounded by bills and bank statements. Max's voice drifted from the living room, animated as ever, pitching a new idea into the echo of his own ambition. As I placed the watch on the counter between us, their faces registered surprise, then guilt, and finally defensiveness. There's something raw that happens when family secrets are laid bare. The air gets thick. Every word feels twice as loud, every silence twice as sharp. I asked as calmly as I could how my father's watch ended up at Russo's pawn. For a moment, no one spoke. David cleared his throat, using the measured voice adults reserve for traffic stops and insurance agents. "We needed some quick capital for Max's startup," he said. "He's got real potential. This is an investment in the future." My mother nodded, avoiding my eyes. I've heard so many versions of the story, from friends' inheritances, borrowed for emergencies. The quiet assumption that those who dream loudest deserve the most. But potential doesn't excuse theft, and dreams don't give you the right to erase someone else's history. Max tried to smooth things over with apologies and half-promises. "I'll pay you back when the business takes off," he insisted, echoing every would-be entrepreneur who's ever confused risk with entitlement. I realized standing there that too often we allow charm and confidence to rewrite the rules. I thought about all the times I'd made myself small out of politeness or fear of causing conflict, when really boundaries would have protected everyone, including them. We teach people how to treat us by what we tolerate, and sometimes the hardest lesson is learning to say enough. I explained without raising my voice what my father had left for me: bonds, records, proof of the trust he placed in me, and the legacy they'd tried to sell off for a quick fix. I told them I wanted the money back, every dollar, and that I wasn't asking. This time I was demanding. Their reactions ran the spectrum: disbelief, anger, shame. I remembered stories of friends who had finally stood up to family members, some who lost relationships, some who found respect. In every case, clarity and honesty brought freedom, even if the price was high. That's the real value of boundaries. They're a gift to yourself, and sometimes a wake-up call for others. By the end of the conversation, I felt both lighter and lonelier than I had in years. My mother pleaded with me not to ruin the family over a watch, not understanding it was never about the watch at all. It was about respect, about history, about learning not to let the loudest voice win. I gathered what mattered and prepared to leave, determined to honor my father's legacy, and maybe finally to start building a life that truly belonged to me. Leaving home felt both like breaking free and breaking apart. I packed my things slowly, realizing how few objects really mattered: a couple of sweaters, a stack of old letters, my father's toolbox, and the watch that started it all. As I loaded my car, I glanced back at the house that had never truly felt like mine. The porch light flickered just as it did the night my father passed away. There's a unique sadness in leaving family, even for the right reasons. Every goodbye echoes with both relief and regret, and I had to learn to accept both as part of moving on. My first night alone in a tiny apartment was nothing like the movies. No champagne, no sudden joy, just quiet, a faint hum from the street below, and a mattress on the floor. It reminded me of friends who described their first taste of freedom as both liberating and deeply lonely. The truth is, starting over means letting go, not just of places, but of old roles and expectations. I called an old friend, shared my fears, and realized so many of us are quietly struggling through transitions no one ever sees. You don't have to have it all together to begin again. The days that followed taught me more than any classroom ever could. I learned how to set up utilities, how to cook for one, how to make a space feel warm, with only a thrift store lamp and a mug that once belonged to my dad. Mistakes happened: burnt toast, lost mail, a leak under the sink that flooded half my kitchen. Each mishap brought frustration, but also small triumphs. I thought of the lesson Dad tried to teach: resilience isn't loud or showy. Sometimes it's just picking yourself up one small problem at a time. Along the way, I saw how independence is built on 1,000 tiny acts of courage. Some friends envied my decision to walk away, but others confided how they wished they could do the same. I realized how many people stay in unhappy places out of fear of loneliness, failure, or disappointing others. The real challenge isn't leaving. It's believing that you deserve something better. That's a lesson many people, especially women, learn later than they should. If you're standing at the edge of your own new beginning, remember it's okay to be scared, and it's okay to want more. By the end of that first month, my apartment felt less like a stopgap and more like a home. I kept my father's watch on the nightstand, a quiet reminder that time is precious and meant to be claimed, not hoarded or given away out of guilt. With each day, I grew more comfortable in my own company, more confident in my ability to create a life on my own terms. And though the past still echoed in quiet moments, I was finally ready to look forward, and not just back. With a sense of clarity I'd never felt before, I turned my attention to the journal my father left behind. Flipping through its pages, I found names, numbers, and careful records of jobs he'd completed, but never been fully paid for. At first it seemed overwhelming, a tangle of invoices, addresses, and amounts owed. But the more I read, the more I realized this was part of my inheritance too. The unfinished business of a man who'd worked quietly and honestly his whole life. I decided it was time to finish what he started, both for him and for myself. I reached out to a local attorney, Ms. Vasquez, who specialized in estate recovery. She reviewed the records and assured me it was all actionable. My father's meticulous notes were more valuable than any contract. I remembered stories from friends whose parents left behind debts or assets that slipped away because nobody claimed them. Too often we walk away from what's rightfully ours simply because the process seems daunting or we fear making waves. Ms. Vasquez sent letters and made calls. Soon checks began arriving, some large, some small, each one a small act of justice for my father's memory. Through this process, I learned how important it is to advocate for yourself, even when it feels uncomfortable or unfamiliar. I thought of people I knew who had let go of opportunities or been taken advantage of, all because they were afraid to speak up. Standing up for yourself isn't about being aggressive. It's about honoring your own value and the value of those who came before you. Sometimes it means having hard conversations. Sometimes it means insisting on fairness, even when others hope you'll stay silent. Every small victory made me a little braver, a little more sure of my own worth. As the debts were settled, I watched how my family reacted from a distance. Max's business plans fizzled, and David's confidence turned to quiet embarrassment. My mother's calls came less frequently, always threaded with regret and justifications. I knew from stories shared over coffee with friends that every family has its version of this, the push and pull between loyalty and respect, between enabling and setting boundaries. The lesson was clear: sometimes loving someone means letting them experience the consequences of their choices. You can't rescue everyone, nor should you try to fix what others refuse to see. With each step forward, I felt the weight of the past loosening its grip. The money recovered became more than just numbers in a bank account. It was proof that quiet persistence, honesty, and courage matter even when no one is watching. My father's legacy wasn't just in the watch or the bonds, but in every lesson he'd woven into my life. I began to see a future where I could use what he left me not just to protect myself, but to help others starting over. I was finally ready to turn the page, embracing what came next with hope and gratitude. As the dust settled, I found myself thinking less about the losses and more about what I could build from them. The money my father left, along with the payments I'd recovered, was more than a safety net. It was an opportunity to begin again on my own terms. I realized how rare this kind of second chance can be. Not everyone gets a clean slate, but everyone deserves the feeling that they can start fresh. I wanted to use this new beginning not just for myself, but to help others who might be stuck in places I'd just left behind. Inspired by what my father had quietly done for others, I looked for ways to give back. I volunteered at a local community center, where people in all stages of life came to ask for help, sometimes for a meal, sometimes for a little advice, sometimes just for someone to listen. There I met women rebuilding after divorce, teenagers aging out of foster care, and veterans trying to find stable ground again. Each of them carried stories of loss and hope, and I saw myself reflected in bits and pieces. I learned that small gestures, a job referral, a warm meal, even a friendly ear could change the shape of someone's week or even their life. I also learned that true generosity isn't always grand or public. My father never talked about the people he'd helped, but the stories surfaced in small, unexpected ways. A neighbor who'd found a roof repaired for free, a coworker whose paycheck stretched a little farther because of a quiet loan. Real kindness, I realized, is given without expectation of return, but it creates ripples that carry on much longer than we know. The lesson was simple and profound: what you share with the world, whether money, time, or encouragement, can echo for years after you're gone. Of course, there were setbacks. Sometimes people let you down, and sometimes you fall short of your own ideals. I burned out once or twice, gave too much, or expected gratitude where none came. Friends reminded me that boundaries weren't selfish. They were necessary for real, sustainable giving. I saw how easy it was to repeat old mistakes, trying to fix everything, forgetting to care for myself. That's a trap many caring people fall into, and it took practice to step out of it. The best lesson: you can only pour from a cup that isn't empty. Gradually, I built a rhythm of giving and receiving, of helping others while honoring my own needs. The wounds from my family hurt less, replaced by a sense of belonging to something larger. My father's watch now sat not just as a symbol of what I'd lost, but of everything I'd gained: resilience, compassion, independence, and a new sense of home. As the seasons changed, so did I. The time had come to look ahead, to imagine what my life might look like if I dared to dream bigger, and to trust that I was ready for whatever came next. Looking back, I see now that what began as a frantic search for a missing watch became a journey toward discovering my own worth. Every step, from uncovering my father's quiet sacrifices to standing up for myself to walking away from old hurts, taught me more about love and resilience than I ever could have learned any other way. I learned that sometimes the real inheritance isn't money or things, but the strength to claim your own story and the courage to rewrite it when you must. My father's legacy lives on not in what he left behind, but in how I choose to move forward every single day. The pain of feeling invisible in my own family gave way to a deeper understanding of myself and others. By stepping out on my own, I discovered the true meaning of independence. It's not just being alone, but being at peace with yourself, knowing you can create your own safety and trusting that you are enough. The people I met along the way, those seeking hope, second chances, or just a little kindness, reminded me that we are all more connected than we realize. Every act of courage, however small, becomes a part of someone else's story too. Through setbacks and small victories, I found that helping others was a way to heal my own heart. My father's lessons about quiet generosity and honest work continue to guide me. If you're listening and feeling stuck, remember your circumstances do not define you. You can choose a different ending at any moment. The mistakes you've made, the love you wish you'd received, the second chances you dream about, they are all starting lines, not finish lines. Don't let fear or other people's doubts decide your future. Stand up for yourself even if your voice shakes. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever felt lost, overlooked, or underestimated, I hope you'll remember that you have the power to change your story. Maybe you have a family secret waiting to be uncovered, a boundary you need to set, or a dream you've put on hold for too long. Whatever it is, you are not alone. Your time is precious. Guard it fiercely, use it bravely, and offer it freely to what matters most. I'd love to hear your stories, your struggles, and your victories in the comments. Your voice could be the inspiration someone else needs right now. If you found meaning in this journey, please like this video, share your thoughts below, and subscribe for more stories of hope, courage, and everyday transformation. Your support helps us reach more people who need a little light on their path. Remember, every day is a chance to choose yourself, to stand up for your worth, and to build a life that honors the love you've received and the love you're still learning to give. Thank you for spending this time with me. I can't wait to hear your story too.